Trump is keen to say, hey, it's not just on me. You guys should do your part too.
We are going to discuss Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Senate appearance earlier today. But before we do, Donald Trump has issued a warning to Europe. He's urged European leaders to cease buying Russian oil, which he's argued is helping Moscow fund its war in Ukraine. He's made those remarks, followed up by a statement from the White House in a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing that took place today. It's quite difficult for European nations to listen to him in some way. They can definitely stop buying oil from Russia, but can they stop dealing with countries who buy oil from Russia? That is another line entirely. Is there any sense from the White House about any ceasefire deal or how close we might be to that, Harriet?
Well, Trump was asked that directly, Kate, and he said, there are things that are about to happen. Just watch this space. It's coming along. But it's worth noting that he said that about Europe stopping buying Russian oil in quite a defensive manner, because he is aware that the US has made all these promises, has suggested that they could find a solution to this. Of course, there was that summit in Alaska a couple of weeks ago, and then Zelensky over at the White House with other European leaders. So it felt like there was a lot of momentum, didn't it, a couple of weeks ago? And that has all fizzled. I mean, that's entirely gone away. I mean, the pendulum has swung so far that in the last 2 days, we've had Vladimir Putin over in China, haven't we, with President Xi and Kim Jong-un. So it does feel like it's grinding to a halt. But Trump is keen to say, hey, it's not just on me. You guys should do your part too.
Yeah, OK. All right. So we just don't know is the answer. He's been impressing upon European nations to stop buying oil from Russia and says he's got some news for us in the next few days. We don't know what that is. Let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Donald Trump's health secretary. He faced an almighty grilling. I think it was over 3 hours long, wasn't it, today in the Senate, over his policy on vaccines and the chaos engulfing the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock called for Kennedy to resign.
You are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
We're the sickest people in the world. We're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy, for the first time, we're seeing deaths from children from measles. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. We're seeing that under your watch. You are a hazard to the health of the American people.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
No, I claim back my time.
We need to wrap up.
You are a hazard to the health of the American people. I think that you ought to resign. And if you don't resign, the President of the United States, who put forward Operation Warp Speed, which worked, should fire you.
Wow. Let's just walk ourselves through, if we can, Harriet, what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing, both at the CDC or what is happening at the CDC, and also the discussion about vaccination.
Yeah, so, I mean, this was always going to be an explosive hearing, Kate, given how controversial RFK Jr.'s actions have been, and it's certainly delivered. I mean, for some context, RFK Jr., he fired all 17 advisors on the Center for Disease Control's vaccine panel earlier this year. And that's something that's really caused a lot of alarm. He has cancelled $500 million in funding for vaccines with the mRNA. And he has caused real upheaval with the actual the firing or resignation, depends who you ask, of the leader of the CDC, Susan Monteras. She is very, very critical of RFK Jr. She says that he wanted her to essentially rubber stamp approval for things without seeing the evidence. And she said she couldn't do that. Her departure set off a cascade of departures. So the department really is in turmoil. And RFK Jr. was absolutely grilled over this.
Okay. And look, we can also talk about what's happening in Florida as well. They've become the first state, haven't they, under Ron DeSantis, to drop the mandate for vaccination, including for children as well. So this is certainly gathering speed. What did Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have to say for himself? In fact, I'll play you a clip and then we can discuss more. This is him calling the US the sickest country in the world and blaming staff at the CDC.
If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at the CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
I mean, it's kind of crazy to hear, isn't it, Harriet, really, that we're the sickest nation in the world, so I'm going to get rid of everyone at the Centre for Disease Control. It's sort of, yes.
He is doing what he promised to do in a certain way, in that he is very well known for being someone with very strong opinions on vaccines, and someone who was going to, as his supporters would say, take a sweeping brush to the department and really shake things up and change things. Some of what he says has got quite widespread support, about removing additives from foods, for instance. That's quite popular among scientists. But it's the vaccine issue that is really causing controversy. As you mentioned, this week in Florida, they have announced that they're no longer making any vaccines mandatory for children going to schools. And he was pressed quite a lot on what he was going to do with vaccines. I mean, the language, as you've seen and have heard in some of those clips, is quite unusually intense for a hearing like this. One Democrat, Tina Smith, she asked him, "When were you lying, sir? When you said you were not anti-vax, or when you told Americans that there is no such thing as a safe vaccination?" And Kennedy was really defensive. I mean, he said both things can be true at once. He was quite dismissive of them, which, only served to anger everybody even more. And I think really interesting to single out the role played by Bill Cassidy. So he's a Republican from Louisiana. He says that effectively we are denying people vaccinations. He's a doctor, and he's someone who was really crucial in actually getting Kennedy approved. And it sounds like he's now regretting that.
Okay. Let's move on from that, shall we, and talk about Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, called Gavin Newscum by Donald Trump. He's criticised Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard in Los Angeles, saying it's cost the taxpayer almost $120 million. In June of this year, the president sent more than 4,200 National Guard soldiers and 700 Marines to the city. That was all over ICE raids, wasn't it, I think, Harriet? In a statement, Newsom said, talk about waste, fraud and abuse. We ask other states to do the maths themselves.
Yes, that's right. So these federal troops, they went in June because of the ICE raids. There was unrest and protest. The justification was that federal buildings were under threat. So that's how Trump could send in federal forces. Of course, on Tuesday, there was the ruling by a judge in San Francisco that actually was not lawful, that they overstepped their duties, because normally the military cannot be used for domestic law enforcement, which the judge said was effectively what was happening. So Newsom is now saying that was also a massive waste of money, as well as being illegal. 120 million, as you said, $71 million in food, $37 million in payroll, $4 million in logistics, and $3.5 million in travel. So Newsom is saying this was really wasteful and totally unnecessary.
It does lead to questions about what else Donald Trump, or where else Donald Trump has been deploying the National Guard. We know that they have been in Washington, D.C. Here's a reminder of his plans on mobilizing to combat crime in Baltimore and Chicago.
And you have this governor, Get Up, who's a terrible governor. Probably he and Gavin Newsom would be probably the two worst and most naive. They're naive. Either they're naive or they're very untruthful. And he'll say, we don't want any protection. We don't need. So in the last 3 weeks, he's lost almost 20 people killed. There's no place in the world, including you can go to Afghanistan, you can go to places that you would think of. They don't even come close to this. Chicago is a hellhole right now. Baltimore is a hellhole right now.
Yeah, he's talking about the Democrat Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker there, isn't he?
Yes, that's right. So Pritzker, high-profile Democrat like Gavin Newsom, also like Gavin Newsom, someone who's weighing up running for the presidency, we believe, in 2028. So these are big names in Democrat circles, and they are really adamant that Trump should not be sending in federal troops to do what they say their state and local law enforcement can do very well. And it's worth noting, Kate, as well, that, we talked about DC having the federal troops in there. Of course, it's slightly different because DC is not a state. But on Thursday, earlier this morning, the Attorney General of DC, he actually filed a lawsuit saying that even that was illegal. So watch this space.
Let's talk about the rumour mill swirling in New York. Reports suggest that Donald Trump has offered a government job to Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, in exchange for dropping his re-election campaign. Tell us more.
It's fascinating, this one, isn't it? So, essentially, the race for the mayor of New York, the vote will be held in November, is between Zoran Mamdani, a very left-wing socialist figure, Eric Adams, the incumbent, and Andrew Cuomo, who was the former governor of New York, also a controversial figure. So the rumor is that Eric Adams has been offered a job by the Trump administration in return for him pulling out of the race, which would then, it's believed, make it more of a contest between Cuomo and Mamdani. All three of those are Democrats, but Cuomo is seen as being much more palatable to the business class than Mamdani. It's a fascinating one. Adams himself has denied it. He was down in Florida yesterday, Kate, on private business. So, there's speculation that was meeting with the Trump team. We don't yet know whether there's any truth to that. Adams is denying it, but he's denied all sorts of things in the past, which have later found out to be true.
Yes. He is a Democrat, though, isn't he? So a job in Trump's administration as a Democrat.
Yes, I mean, he is a Democrat, but he is running as an independent because he has had all sorts of problems with the party. I mean, remember, Eric Adams has been charged with corruption over his dealings with kickbacks allegedly from Turkey, getting favors to push through planning permits for the consulate here in New York. So Eric Adams is someone who's had trouble, but then Donald Trump has pardoned him, has said that he's dropping these charges. So Adams is in Trump's good books. So stranger things have happened.